Sound of Freedom, directed by Alejandro Monteverde, is the latest film from Angel Studios, and it stars Kurt Fuller, Bill Camp, Academy Award-winning actress Myra Sorvino, and Jim Caviezel as Tim Ballard in this film about human trafficking involving children. It is a true story, and it is extremely powerful, and unfortunately, we had to talk about this film, but it's good to know that there are people like this out there who are willing to go out and defend children and human lives against this horrendous act that's becoming a pervasive crime in the world, soon to surpass even drug trafficking. This film came out this year, but was actually filmed several years ago, but was blocked by several major studios from even coming out. And Angel Studios picked up the ball and did a huge campaign of crowdsourcing. And so now we have the opportunity to talk about this film, and we're going to talk about it in my review in my next conservative take. If you're unfamiliar with the way we do our movie reviews, then please check the link right here, and that will explain everything you need to know. Also be mindful that this review will have some spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything about the film at that level, then click in the description. It will be indexed, and just go to the final take to skip past all of that. And just so you know, we will denote the spoiler section right here. Now, before we get into my review and scoring of this film, I think I would be remiss if I did not talk to you about the backstory and the production of Sound of Freedom. This film was actually produced and filmed roughly 5 years ago under the studio 21st Century Fox. And if you remember, that studio was bought by Disney. And guess what Disney did with this film?
Not good.
You guessed it. They put it on the shelf to possibly never be seen by anybody ever. Well, that's simply unacceptable for the producers and the writers of this film. And they said, you know what? The story of Tim Ballard is too important. The story of these kids who are being trafficked all around the world is too important. So they fought with Disney, according to them, to get the distribution rights so they could push this film out and get it into the hands of the public. Well, they came across a studio named Angel Studios, and they decided to take this on. They're the same company that brings us The Chosen. They also produced the Tuttle Twins, the books, and also the dry bar comedy stand-up channel on YouTube and other places, which is Clean Comedy. And so they have a Christian conservative edge to them, and they fought for this production. And in March of 2023, announced that this will be a summer film that they will put out. And on July 4th, 2023, Independence Day, this film will be released. I got a chance to see it a day earlier, and it is fantastic. And I will get into the story right here because that's what this section is for the story, which I would give a 7. And trust me, that's going to be the lowest score you're going to hear in this particular review. It's a 7 because of the narrative is a linear structure. It is what it is. It starts off as a depressing docudrama, crime-riddled, depressing, gritty movie, and it turns into something totally different in the end. I'll explain more about that in the spoiler section, and I will give you more indication of this film and how I felt about it when we get to the intangibles and also the emotional impact section. Okay, for the category of emotional impact, this film is very easy for me to score because I am giving it a 10. This film, I can say categorically, that is probably the film in my life that has given me the most visceral reaction from a sad nature inside a theater watching a movie. I've had reactions similar watching at home and other films, but never in the theater, in public, and having a reaction, several reactions like I had in the theater where I literally cried openly in the theater. And the thing is, it's just the kids. It's about the kids. And that's the sadness and the anger that comes from what's happening to these kids and the people that have no heart or no empathy for human lives, much less the lives of young children. And it's just something, as you know, is a real thing that's happening and it's growing. And the statistics that they give you in the film make you even more angry. And the film just takes your emotions and it just whips them all over the place. There's very few parts here for lightness at all. There is very few comic relief elements. They try, but it's just not there. You feel for the characters who have to go deep cover and do certain things and act certain ways, even though that goes against them. The stories that they tell about each other, about why they're there, I'll talk about that maybe in the spoiler section. But just know that this film, from an emotional impact standpoint, I could not give a higher score because it's all over the place. It's high octane emotion, fear, anger, tears, some laughter, very minimal laughter, and I'll tell you more in the spoiler section when it comes to that. All right, let's talk about the intangibles for this film, and this one's a little harder to give a score. I'm going to give it 9 or a 10. In this case, I'm going to give it 10 because of the cast, which is absolutely fantastic. You have an Academy Award-winning actress in here who I believe is probably underused, but is a vital part of this story. And if I get around to, I mentioned it in the spoiler section. If not, look this person up who played the wife of Tim Ballard, Jim Caviezel's character. Jim Caviezel, he goes without saying, he was in The Passion of the Christ. He's a fantastic actor. And the cast in general is just phenomenal. And the roles that they play are very believable, and you really pull for every last one of them. You understand their dilemmas. You have people who are undercover, don't want to know that they're being helpful in this area, but they are driven to do things that they probably wouldn't do by the force of the will of Jim Caviezel's character, Tim Ballard, and just their conviction in God and doing what's right and protecting these kids and just doing something. And there are many heroes across the board in this film. And it's just something that, to me, is a huge intangible because that made me want to watch the film. The characters in this film I really pulled for, other than all the heroes, of course, but the other ones, you just hated those guys. This film is lit very well. The score is very good. The story is very good. The pacing is very good. The way that they give you their backstory and how and why they're doing what they do, their motivation. The director did a fantastic job there. So it's got enough intangibles for me that just makes this one of the best films I've ever seen. And it's probably gonna be one of the highest films I've ever scored. So for intangibles, I'm going to give it a 10. For the category of watchability, I'm going to give Sound of Freedom a 9. And I'm going to explain that in the spoiler section. If you want to watch the film and don't want to be spoiled, then go watch the film and come back and check out this review and hear what I have to say in the spoiler section for watchability. So for the overall rating of this film, I'm going to give it a 10. This is the score that I give to people who say, hey, Kyle, what is your take on this film? What would you give it out of 10? I would give them this score. It's got everything. It takes you on a ride. It is suspenseful. It's sad. It's depressing. It's scary. It is all the things you're looking for a film in terms of all of that. Plus, it's directed very well. As we mentioned before, the acting is stellar. The cast is stellar and all of that. And plus, the importance of the message is so high. All that plays a factor as to why I'm giving this film a 10. And so to find out more, check out the spoiler section as we go into that right now. So here we are in the spoiler section. And so I want to take care of some housekeeping items that I mentioned in the review before, or what I was going to talk about here. So let's start with the wife and why her character I felt was underused, but didn't want to say why. It was underused, but I think it was appropriate for this reason. It's appropriate because her character, the wife of Tim Ballard, gave him permission to do what he did, risk everything, his own life, to save these kids he never met. One of the themes in the film is, what would you do if one of your kids wouldn't come home? What if your kid was out somewhere else, you didn't know where he was, and you have an empty bed in your house? What would you do? How far would you go? And that theme carries all the way through the motivations of all these heroes in this film who didn't want to do the things they did at the level they were doing them. Yes, they were vested in some ways, but were they really willing to go all in to help these kids? And the answer, in many cases, was yes. And that's why this film is so powerful. Tim Ballard helped this gentleman who is a father who lost 2 of his kids to trafficking. The young boy is fantastic. His acting is phenomenal. His timing is great. His subtleties is great. His performance is fantastic. The daughter who also got taken, she gets rescued later. That's powerful in terms of her acting and all of that. But these 2 kids helped each other and sacrificed things to help the other. The kid helped get the sister back, and the sister helped the brother to escape. So all these things are really, really cool. And ultimately, those 2 are really the main heroes of this film. And they talk about that at the end of the film, where Jim Caviezel gives a message in the film talking about this, talking about how it's important, how this film, it could be the next Uncle Tom's Cabin to wake people up to the plight of what's going on with human trafficking. They give a UPC code at the end of how you can help out, how you can help pay for people who can't see the film, how you can pay it forward, how you can support the film. It's fantastic. They give a countdown telling you in 2.5 minutes, you're going to have a message. So you stick around until after the movie so you can see this message. So they're doing a really good job of promoting this film inside the film itself. They even say, get your camera out and take a picture of this UPC code so you can actually find out how to help and support this film and help others who maybe are unable to afford this film. Another thing I mentioned about in the review that I want to talk about here is watchability. And I gave it a 9 on that, probably because of the dense nature of the heavy-handedness of the story of what you're seeing on the screen, how far they're willing to go to show you the abduction, the pain, the trauma, the evil that we're seeing with the people perpetrating this, men and women trafficking these kids. It's horrible. And so watchability, you don't want to watch this film that much, really. So I didn't want to put that in there like that. The other thing is, in terms of the emotional impact, is there is a portion of it that I didn't want to mention before, and that is there is a happy ending. So I didn't want to spoil the ending because that does play into the film, because you don't know if these kids are going to get rescued. They take you all over the place and show you that Tim Ballard was willing to go to the depths of hell to rescue these kids, and it's highly commendable. The man's a hero. But again, there are so many heroes across the board on this. It's too many to name, including the kids themselves who sacrificed for each other so they could have a chance to hear the sound of freedom. Okay, for this film, Sound of Freedom, I'm going to give it a score of 19, which translates to 4 stars and a go for this movie. Now, normally for a film like this with this kind of tone and story, I would give it a go with caution, but at a PG-13 level, I would hope that you are smart enough to keep your young kids away from this film. It's just too much to explain, and it's just very, very hard to watch for adults, and I don't think kids should probably watch this if they're too young. But it's a very powerful film. It's very well paced. You're never bored. It keeps you at the edge of your seat. It has horrific moments, exciting moments, powerful moments, as I mentioned in the spoiler section. And so I encourage everyone to go see this film. I'm going to leave a link below to go check out how you can help people see this film if they can't afford it. There's a pay it forward program that they're doing, allowing you to buy tickets for people who can't afford to see it. And so I recommend you do that. And I recommend you going and spending money on this film and letting people know about this film, because this film was crowdfunded. Like I said before, Disney put it on the shelf and didn't want it to be seen by anybody. I wonder why. And so, but now it's here. And as I mentioned in the spoiler section, I mentioned again here that they're hoping that this film could be the next Uncle Tom's Cabin in terms of the book, in terms of what the book did to wake people up to the ills of slavery. Maybe this movie can be that sort of impact in terms of waking people up to the impacts of human trafficking, in this case, children. And so I hope you guys check this film out, and I'll see you in my next conservative take.